Okay, so Hare Krishna, and welcome everyone to this 11th PS Alumni program. So I want to just first of all begin by saying this is a very, very special program. We're actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary, so we're going to have a big round of applause to the organisers for putting together these programs for us. So we're very lucky to have a very wonderful speaker with us this evening, His Holiness Devamrita Swami. Maharaj has been traveling for the last 40 years around the world, speaking about spirituality as an author, a practicing monk, and as a teacher. And he's going to be discussing this idea of material and spiritual happiness, and what exactly happiness is. So we have a warm welcome for His Holiness Devamrita Swami. So Maharaj, thank you first of all for coming and spending your time with us. If I can begin by asking, to you, what exactly is happiness? And how would you define what spiritual happiness is?
Happiness these days is a great mystery. And that shows you how we're at a critical point in the Western attempt at civilization. To understand what is happiness, that's like searching for the Holy Grail. What is it? And how can you hold on to it? You can approach happiness from the material point of view. A popular theory is that 50% of your happiness depends on your genetic makeup. Everyone supposedly has a happiness set point. Just like weight, you know, some people just can't move their weight less or more. Supposedly there's some kind of set point for body fat. Similarly, some material researchers propose that there is a genetic set point for happiness. Some children are born with a cheerio disposition, and others are born with a kind of gloomy disposition. So according to this theory, 50% of your happiness is already predetermined by your genetic makeup. And then there's another 10% which is very difficult to change because that happiness 10% is bound up with things like your job, where you live, your marriage. Now, all those things can change, we know that, but not instantaneously. So that's 10%. So you're up to 60% of your happiness, according to this material theory. 60% is very difficult to budge. But that gives you a 40% window of opportunity. When we talk about bhakti happiness, Krishna consciousness, spiritual happiness, we're talking about how you have 100% possibility to affect your happiness. The bhakti attempt goes beyond your genetic makeup, beyond your circumstances, job, marriage, where you live. 100% is in your hands. That is real freedom. That is the real opportunity to be happy. It's interesting that you give me this topic because via the BBT, the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, I've just published a small book called Hiding an Unnatural Happiness. It's due in the UK any moment. So Consider this. There are, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, for those who don't know, it's the graduate study to Bhagavad Gita, the prime Bhakti Yoga text. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that there are two kinds of persons who can be happy in this world. The first type we don't know about. the complete materialistic enjoyer who just says, happiness is all about the senses, gratifying your senses, work hard, party hard, don't worry about anything else. I know that there's no one here like that. What's the other type? Since no one here fits into the first category the Bhagavatam mentions, what's the other category? The completely enlightened person, self-realized soul, who is beyond all material influence, beyond all identifying with the body and mind. He or she is situated in the pure spiritual identity, in direct connection with the ultimate source of pleasure, Krishna. So, perhaps we have a few here like that, in that category? No, you're saying. So where does that leave us? We're not complete materialistic fools. Work hard, party hard, let the good times roll, get it while you can and leave it at that. And you'll say, you're not completely enlightened and self-realized. So Srimad Bhagavatam says, guess what? Everyone in between those two categories has to be in anxiety. You're neither a complete fool, nor are you completely enlightened. My definition of happiness, you're interested in that?
Please.
It's impossible to understand without connection to the ultimate source of happiness.
Now, some people would say that they're not connected to any kind of supremacy, but they're experiencing happiness. I mean, I'd wager most people in this room probably have seen the last Star Wars film. Maybe not then. Wrong crowd. But people have experienced happiness outside of spirituality. So what is material happiness, and is there anything wrong with it?
We need to understand happiness from the external and internal point of view. All right, I feel happy. 2 weeks ago, I remember I was happy. Remember that Saturday night 2 months ago? It was great, wasn't it?
Fantastic.
All right, you'll say, undeniably, that's happiness. But the yogis will say, look at the quantity as well as the quality. How long did it last? Now you'll say, well, so what? It didn't last long, but I had it. This time we almost had it all. I was speaking at IIT in Mumbai yesterday, and I presented to them a popular maxim, principle for material happiness. And it sounds quite deep, and I think it will answer your question. The test of true enjoyment is the remembrance that it leaves behind. What do you think? Sounds good, doesn't it? The test of true enjoyment is the remembrance that it leaves behind. This may sound appealing, but when you look at it more deeply, you see it is so deficient. Why is there simply the fading traces of enjoyment that you must savor? What happened to the enjoyment? Real happiness has staying power. Not that you're simply left to relish the memory. Hey, that was good. Do you remember 2 years ago? Wasn't that wonderful? We're so starved for real happiness that we cling to such precious memories and take that to be so significant. All right, there is something there, okay? There is something there, but it's not enough for us. So you have to look at the quantitative analysis. The so-called happiness doesn't stick around, and it just leaves you with memories to try and relish. Then the quality. Can material happiness really affect your core being in such a monumental way? If we are not the body and mind, and I think most of you here will say, oh, we're not the body. If we're not the body and mind, then how can there be substantial happiness simply connected to the body and mind, if we're not that? So this is the internal analysis. Something is wrong with material endeavors for happiness. Now this may take some time to realize. We have to make progress, but this is the nature of reality. We need to change our concepts and our attempts and pursuits of happiness.
Just on that point then, if it's the case that material happiness is fleeting and spiritual happiness has so much more depth for it, why do we see that predominantly throughout the world people are chasing after material happiness then?
This is the unfortunate situation. They're misled, and they're bringing into this life conditioning from the past life. There's a mass hallucination being perpetuated and distributed throughout the world. I have coined a term for it: mass consensual trance. Let's all hallucinate together. There is such a thing as satisfying material happiness, isn't it? You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And your preceding generations handed down to you? Like Olympic runners passing the baton? Your parents passed the baton to you? There is such a thing as material happiness. I'm tired, I'm old, I'm about to leave this body, but I pass the baton to you. You carry on the tradition. So in this way, billions of persons head in the wrong direction. But that doesn't mean it's correct. And therefore, it does take some knowledge and strength to go the spiritual happiness route. Because naturally, your mind will start to play tricks on you. Look, you know, billions of people can't all be wrong. And what do I think I am anyway? I'm no saint, come on. Right? And am I really going to deprive myself of all that good stuff out there? Get real. And probably I can only do it, if I try, for just a few years. So yes, without superior knowledge, we'll succumb to this mass consensual trance.
So, for those of us here that are trying to pursue some form of spiritual happiness, are trying to swim against that current of material happiness, how do we know we're on the right path? What kind of symptoms are there? What should we be experiencing? How do we know that that spiritual happiness is true?
You should notice two things. If you're properly practicing, you should notice a diminishment of the material fever. The fever is coming down. And you should notice an increasing attraction for spiritual topics, spiritual activities, spiritual knowledge, and spiritual association. When you see those, you can understand your health is coming back. Which leads to another point. If through knowledge we can understand that we're in a diseased condition of life, shouldn't the priority be to become healthy rather than simply try to enjoy in a state of disease? Of course, we can be very determined to do that. Perhaps you can remember you had a very bad cold, the flu or whatever, and it was a feast day. You're not going to fast and miss the feast. You're going to go for it anyway, right? But you know how it feels. Your nose is clogged up, your sinuses are a wreck. Yeah, you can't taste anything, you can't smell anything, but still you're going to go for it. How many of you have done like that? Come on, right? I mean, so many of you passed up a feast because you said, I'm sick, I should not partake. No, you wanted somehow or other to get some kind of pleasure. So even though you were so sick, you partook of the feast. So that's an example of how we can try to live our life. We're diseased because we think we're the body, we think we're the mind, we think we're matter, and therefore material happiness makes sense because we think we're matter. So what Krishna gives us in Bhagavad Gita is a process to confirm our spiritual identity and to confirm the existence of spiritual happiness. I was explaining at IIT in Mumbai that nowhere in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna ask you to believe in him. Everyone's got this fear, religious belief. Sounds like creepy stuff, doesn't it? So uncool. Religious belief. Who wants to be a true believer? Krishna is asking you to be a true experiencer. He's inviting you to enter the bhakti laboratory. Apply your senses according to his instructions and get the result. Isn't that fair? Material existence is inviting you. Apply your senses. Work hard. Get the result, right? And Krishna is inviting you. So you have to decide, based on knowledge, which proposition do you want to accept?
We only have to turn on the TV to see that there's a lot of suffering in this world. And this world isn't always a nice place. How does somebody continue to try to pursue spiritual happiness in light of seeing so much suffering in this world?
We must understand the root cause of misery. Otherwise, we'll simply be misled to external and insubstantial solutions. Yes, we can endeavor in the political field, the economic field, to try to reduce suffering, and there is value to that, of course. But we should know that unless we solve the root problem, which is disconnection from the ultimate source, disconnection from Krishna, simply trying economically or politically will not suffice. I often give the example, because as soon as I say something like this, often there's a challenge. Are you saying we should neglect the body? Are you saying we shouldn't do any material progress, any material advancement? And I didn't say that. When I'm speaking at universities, I often get that challenge, because people are sensitive, you know? Like, you just try to point out to them very gently, there's a spiritual direction they should be pursuing. And often they become insecure. Are you trying to say we should ignore the body? I never said that. Are you trying to say there should be no material advancement? I never said that. I'm speaking of priorities. That's the name of the game. Prioritization. So I give the example that if I'm sick, I'll go to a doctor. Hopefully the doctor will sort me out a bit. When I'm leaving the doctor's office, do I say, I'm not going to thank you because I'm not the body? No. I thank the doctor, especially since the doctors I go to, they're treating me for free as devotional service. So I thank them, but I don't think that their medical practice has solved my main problems in life. That is the difference. So I'll go to a doctor and I'll be grateful, but I won't think the doctor has solved my real issues.
So finally, you're a graduate from Yale University, and in your youth you had your finger on the pulse of the Manhattan lifestyle, the cult.
Must you remember that?
The culture, the music, but you gave all of that up to become a monk. So what led you to that decision?
When I was my first year, I was at my first year at Yale, I told my academic advisors that I wanted to find the solution to all human problems. So they said, all right, your goal is actually what the university is for, although most persons don't pursue such an aim. So they told me, you can study whatever you like in this whole illustrious university. Try to find a solution to all human problems. If you happen to find something, come back and let us know. So I did that. I made my own course of study. My academic advisors told me that when they were students, they wished they had the courage to do the same thing. So I did that. So at the end of so many exhaustive studies, 4 years, making my own program of independent study, I didn't have to worry about the effects on my career. My academic advisors told me, hey, you know, this is Yale. You know, you graduate from Yale and that's enough, you know. So at the end of 4 years, I concluded there is no such solution to human problems. Materially, it's not possible. So yes, I was in Manhattan. Enjoyer. My friends at Yale considered me to be the quintessential, the perfect model of a good timer. I always knew where all the best good times were. The best concerts, the best nightclubs, everything. They considered me to be a premier pleasure lover. But I began to consider, if I don't know pleasure that has no beginning or end, my reputation as a pleasure lover is unjustified. So I began to think, I've got to find pleasure that has no beginning or end. Then I can be crowned a pleasure lover.
So thank you very much for answering my questions this evening. We'd like to open up the floor now if anyone else has any questions at all.
Yes.
You mentioned suffering before, so how do you know when... So what was your previous question about suffering?
So how can we pursue spiritual happiness in light of seeing so much suffering in the world?
So my question is, do you feel that the suffering is sort of necessary in order to realize what is happy? Because one defines the other. You can't realize what is happiness if you don't have the suffering to compare it to.
You know, when it's a nice, bright, sunny day in London, and you're walking on the street, feeling quite cheerio because it's so sunny and everything is nice. You know those nights in London I've seen after work when it's warm and everyone's out on the streets at the cafes and pubs, you know, and those kind of days. But I come upon you and I'm going to be merciful to you. I know that unless you experience some suffering, you're not really going to appreciate it, what a good day it is. So, in my delusion, but no, in my compassion, I apply a lead pipe to your head with some force. You collapse on the ground. And then 5 minutes later, when you come to consciousness again, you ask me, why did you do that? And I said, I'm just trying to help you appreciate the day more. By having the pain, then you'll be able to savor what a wonderful day it is even more. You will not accept that? Okay, let's go at things another way. On the material platform, it's true. There's always two sides of the coin, happiness and distress. They go together. That's the frustrating thing about material life. You can't have one side of the coin. The yoga knowledge teaches you this is duality, always twos. There's always pleasure, pain, health, illness, happiness, distress, poverty, wealth, fame, infamy, on and on it goes. Our life becomes a determined quest just to have one side of the coin. It can't happen. What Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita do is to take you above those dualities, those twosomes. Spiritual happiness is not bound up with material happiness or material distress. You don't need material distress in order to appreciate real happiness, spiritual happiness. Okay?
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi Krishna Maharaj. My question is that there are other religions like Buddhism that offer spiritual happiness. So are there different levels of spiritual happiness in this process?
To answer that question, I have to go more deeply into what is actual spiritual happiness. Because our main problem is, as tiny particles of consciousness, tiny I ams, that's the literal translation of Atma, I am. We're so tiny, yet we forget our connection to the supreme I am, the supreme Atma. How can we be happy without any connection to the complete whole? How can we be holistic as parts if we have no knowledge and no connection to the complete whole? So, let's say you spent your life banging your head against the wall. You thought that's the goal of life. Nothing else to do but bang your head against the wall repeatedly. If I get you to stop, that I'm doing a good deed, yes? And naturally, you'll feel some relief once the throbbing in your head dies down. Mm-hmm. However, unless you know what to do with your head once you stop banging against the wall, you might well go right back to banging it again. So, spiritual processes that try to get you to kill all desire, stop all activities of suffering. That's good, but unless you get the higher taste, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you're not going to give up the lower taste for long. So we give credit to spiritual paths that bring you to the point of understanding material existence is suffering, it's an illusion, material desire will never fulfill you. We give credit to that, but we recognize the solution is only half. You have to have something superior. You mentioned Buddha, for example. He had a very brilliant portfolio, very concentrated. He said, I've come to teach two things and two things only. What is dukkha, suffering, and how to become free from dukkha, suffering. That's it. Now, what happens when you're not suffering? He never talked about. He did his teaching role perfectly. You're a teacher, you know, teachers have a curriculum. They have lesson goals. He executed his mission perfectly. But for the complete package, you have to understand. What am I disconnected from? What should I be connected to? I'm a tiny particle. What is the nature of the complete whole, the ultimate source? Bhakti begins actually from the point of freedom from material existence. Bhakti yoga is about connection to that ultimate source of pleasure. Without that connection, we can't be happy, just like these children without their parents can't be happy. But we are determined in our illusion to exist independently. This is why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Mamaivam sho jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. You living entities are all my fragmental parts, but you're struggling with your mind and senses in the oppressive material atmosphere. We're like flies buzzing around the room, and we see a piece of toast covered with honey. The fly lands on the toast covered with honey, attracted. And then what happens? It's caught. And the more it struggles, the more it pursues happiness, the more entangled it becomes in the honey. It can't become free. So that is our situation. Put another way, the connection between the Atma, the I am, and the dream of material happiness is completely imaginary. But that takes some purification and spiritual progress to understand. And gradually you will understand that by following Krishna's instructions. Just like gradually these children will become mature. If they follow their parents' instructions, stay out of trouble, they'll gradually become mature. Without connection to Krishna, how can there be happiness? So what Krishna is offering is beyond mere cessation of material suffering. This is how exalted Bhakti Yoga is.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi. So, it's really a privilege to be actually listening to you here, and it's really great feeling to be, listening to your words of wisdom. My question is again on this follow-up. I'll be honest, my family find it really interesting that actually this is one aspect of Hinduism, if we were to call it a religion, where spirituality is given a higher, a goal. Spiritualism is the goal here. So my question is really that we mentioned Bhakti Yoga and we set spirituality as the goal, but as a someone who made up of mind and body, I think it's really important to have a healthy mind and healthy body to be able to actually take the journey. And I think in our tradition, for thousands of years, yoga has been a central element to that, in that it allows this body to be used as an instrument to actually achieve that level of spirituality. And yet that seems to have been neglected out of the entire, entire cross-section of, whether you call it belief system or, any aspect of the faith. Because this is such an important part of our culture. It's been really associated, over so many thousands of years. How come none of the faith system or belief system actually take that into consideration? Because with yoga, people would probably accelerate, would I say, if it's the right way to say it, to achieving their level of spirituality and then detachment from material world and attachment to Krishna.
I do physical yoga every day. It's the best system of exercise for keeping the body healthy. Nevertheless, the body is one thing and the spirit self is another thing. If there's actually going to be spiritual benefit, there must be a linking process for connecting with the ultimate source of pleasure. We must understand Krishna, because we're pleasure seeking. Where? And where is that ultimate source of pleasure? We're looking for it in the material illusion. We need to know the process for connecting to that ultimate source of pleasure. We cannot stamp out our pleasure-seeking capacity. We have to make that ultimate connection. And that requires spiritual methods. Yes, take care of the body and mind, but there must be applied spiritual technology for making that ultimate connection. We are part of Krishna. We cannot be happy, just like the children cannot feel safe and secure without their parents.
So, sorry, just a quick follow-up. So is that something you feel that should be, preached and actually encouraged as a part of Bhakti Yoga?
Bhakti Yoga is for the whole person. We are not the body and mind, but you should take care of that equipment because it's Krishna's energy. We should take care of the body, the mind, the environment, society, human society, animal society, the ecosphere. It all is Krishna's energy. So the Bhakti Yogi has the most complete and holistic vision. How the material energy is coming from Krishna, how the spiritual energy is coming from Krishna. You see, once you recognize these various energies, then we must know how to deal with those energies in a way that pleases the ultimate source of those energies. Then you have the advancement of human civilization.
Thank you very much, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Regarding association, bad association, how does one continue spiritual? Basically, to advance a spiritual life, there's a feeling to help. There's a feeling to help, but to what extent do you compromise the association with you're with? If you have a nature to help, in terms of following spiritual life, am I making?
What kind of help are you concerned with?
In terms of association, I think my story is I'm keeping bad association, but I'm trying to advance a spiritual life. But my heart says if I'm with them, maybe I can influence them with spiritual life. So
is it happening?
Well, no, this is the thing. So, but
If you really care for them, your associates, if you really care for all of human society, then we should become qualified to help. Let's say that you have some kind of medical problem, a tumor or heart problems, and I say to you, let me perform surgery on you. I really feel for your situation. I want to help. What would you say? No, but I feel for you. I want to help. Don't you understand? My heart is full of compassion. Let me operate on you. It's all about the heart. It's all about good feelings, good vibes. No, you wouldn't allow it. You want to know my qualification. So the whole world is full of persons who want to care and love without qualification. First of all, how many ladies here would marry a man with 0 financial resources? He'll say, dear, I love you. It's all about love. These other considerations don't matter. How many of you would accept that? I mean, he's got no financial resources whatsoever. He's got and no hope for getting any resources. When I was a 5-year-old boy, my mother gave me some advice which I never had a chance to apply, but I remember the advice she told me. She said, son, always remember, romance without finance is a nuisance. The point is that there must be qualification. If you actually want to love and care, you have to know what you're doing. The problem with the love and care that's so common in the world today is that there's no qualification for loving, for caring. And that way, the love and care becomes actually cheap. In the same way that, oh, let me operate on your heart, because even though I have no surgical qualification, you know what's in my heart, how I feel for you. You mean well, yeah, I mean well. That's all that counts. Reach out and operate on someone's heart. Make it a better world if you can. So I think you get the point. If you really want to care for your friends, and I can understand where you're coming from. When I was in my Manhattan days and taking up bhakti, my associates, they weren't into it. In fact, I didn't even tell them about my bhakti practice, but they just picked it up. That, hey man, what's going on with you? I never mentioned it to them, but they noticed. It used to be so much fun. What happened? What happened? We don't know if we can hang out with you anymore. There's something weird that's come over you. They noticed my material fever going down, and that alarmed them. And so I would tell myself, oh, but I don't want to hurt them. Krishna wouldn't want to hurt anyone. I made those excuses. But gradually I began to accept the facts that if I really cared for them, I had to become qualified to help not only them, but the whole world. But that takes some training, some purification, some qualification. Just like someone wants to be a doctor. They go through years of medical preparation. And everyone thinks that's worth it. Yeah, we need doctors, qualified doctors. Let them study, let them do their internship. So similarly, we need spiritual doctors. So if you really care for your friends, you want to give the best not only to your friends but the whole world, then become spiritually qualified.
Okay, so we've got time for one more question. Anyone would like to ask? Yes, go ahead.
Aren't you said Krishna doesn't say believe in me, he says experience it, and this is the process in the Bhagavad Gita. So what is that process?
Maya sakta manaparta yogam yunjan mayashraya. Krishna says, Arjuna, I'm going to teach you the process about how your mind can become attached to me in full Krishna consciousness. You'll understand everything. There won't be any doubts. Just listen. So the process begins with listening. You listen. And then you apply what you've heard and you get the experience. The bhakti process begins with listening, associating with Krishna through sound. Because by hearing from Krishna, you're actually associating with Krishna. Because Krishna is the same as his instructions. And that's why we chant Hare Krishna. Because Krishna is present as his sound vibration. The whole bhakti process is centered on non-material sound, bringing you the association of Krishna, the experience of Krishna. And gradually you become more and more aware of that. Even in the beginning stages of bhakti, you can perceive the ultimate goal. Although you're not yet at the ultimate goal, you can see it down the road. And therefore you feel encouraged. That is the advantage of properly following the bhakti process. Even though you're not at the ultimate goal, you see it. You clearly see where you're going. And even in the beginning stages of bhakti, you can taste the spiritual happiness. All right, sometimes you get buffeted by material influences in the beginning stages, but still, you have that superior flavor. And you're thinking, if I can just get that all the time, to try and get that all the time is worth a lifetime of preparation and purification and proper spiritual development. Okay?
So just been told by the organisers we do have time for a few more questions. Would anyone else like to ask?
Yeah, this is great. I can go on all night long, but...
We can arrange that.
Yes, so in the day-to-day life, how do we protect ourselves from the negative energy? If you go with an open heart to the world and you collect everything back, you get the good, you get the bad, how do we protect ourselves from that bad energy not influencing us for our future act or for our behavior in the future?
You have to know how to protect yourself if you want to love and care, because there are negative influences. That's why in the bhakti process we have what are called the regulated principles of freedom. There are things we do and there are things we don't do. There's certain things we don't do so that we're not leaving ourselves open to negative influence. Just like a patient in the hospital. He or she wants to recuperate. So therefore there's certain things that the patient doesn't do for the sake of the patient's health and well-being. Otherwise the patient will be wide open to a health setback. So in bhakti, we have things to do and things not to do. If you remain free from those things you shouldn't do, you've basically avoided most of the possible problems in your spiritual development. Do you want me to explain about those things you shouldn't do? Well, I'll give you an autobiographical explanation. My last month, maybe I shouldn't be so honest. My last month at Yale, I was preparing for my final exams, and my flatmate and I We wanted some relief from such intense studying. So we turned on the television. But we would watch television with the volume turned down, and we would speculate on what was going on. Because we were Yale students, we had to show that we're not ordinary students. So, we wouldn't watch TV with the volume turned up. That was for ordinary people. We'd watch it with the volume turned all the way down, and then we could speculate and give theories about what was going on. So, all of a sudden, I saw these strange-looking persons, men dressed like him, and ladies dressed like this young lady here. And I said, who are these aliens? We got to turn up the volume. I can't figure out what's going on. So we turned up the volume, and we heard these devotees, Hare Krishna devotees. They were on TV, nationwide TV show, explaining their lifestyle and all about Bhakti Yoga, Krishna Consciousness. And when I heard them explain the prohibitions that they follow, I still remember my words to this day. I said, what? They don't do this, they don't do that, and they don't do that? These people are fools. They have missed the goal of life. They talk about Ananda. I learned that word by hearing, Ananda bliss. They keep saying Ananda, Ananda. We'll invite them to one of our parties. We'll show them what Ananda is. Those were my very words. What happened? 8 months later, I was in the Brahmacharya ashram as a monk trainee. So I can appreciate when persons feel a little hesitant when they hear about the prohibitions. But those prohibitions are to protect you from negative influence and to allow you to experience the full spiritual influence. So yes, if you have the proper bhakti lifestyle, you'll be immune, for the most part, to negative influence because of the way you live. Okay?
Anyone else?
Sorry, just to follow on from that. You were a student, so you hadn't established, say, a role in the family, but say your spiritual calling comes after you've achieved the 2.4 and you have family life, and you've already introduced all those negative influences that are detrimental to spiritual life. To then change that whole unit, I mean, it's only, say, me, for an example, who's entering my spiritual journey, but the kids and my husband are on their own spiritual paths or not, or what. So how would you then, you can't just suddenly say, right, we're not doing this from tomorrow. It's too much of a shock to everyone, as well as to someone who's used to not following a bhakti life. You've got to introduce it slowly, but that's surely not penalised in any way, because these things take time, it's a process. How would you roll it into become a natural way of life? If it's forced, it becomes frustrating and it becomes stressful. But if it's natural, it's just natural. Does that make sense?
Yes. Do you have men at home, husband or sons? Well, then you have to cope with something known as the male ego. You have to be very skillful in dealing with that. The best way is simply you show by example. Don't push. But you show by example how the spiritual lifestyle is so peaceful and enlivening, and gradually they can notice the changes in you. You be the change you want to see in them. But you're right, you can't make some dramatic overnight revolution. It'll really cause a disturbance, and you don't want that. But you yourself can develop spiritually as an individual while maintaining your family affairs. And then, in time, the husband and children, they may notice, hey, mom's into a good thing, you know. She's on a good wicket, you know.
So do you just ignore the resistance? Well, not ignore it, but just go with the flow.
But what kind of resistance? Resistance to what?
The whole concept, I think, at the moment is just...
For you to do it or for them?
Yeah, just to be part of the whole, like even...
For you?
Well, no, I'm happy following
Okay, so then?
To learn. I'm at the learning stage.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I don't influence them at all. I just let them do what they're doing at the moment.
Yes,
But
show a good example.
It should just, yeah, so it can just follow step by step. It shouldn't just be a big leap, should it?
You can individually push on with your spiritual practice, yes? Wonderful. Be thankful for that. And in time, those who want to notice will notice. All right? Be the change that you want to see in others. All right?
Anyone else? Just if anyone has not asked a question yet. Yeah, thanks.
You talked about materialistic happiness and spiritual happiness. And I think in today's world, there's a lot of technology which is out there, which is like iPhones, for example, social media, and a lot of people seem to be happy with using social media and iPhones and things like this. And for a lot of people in the world today, that seems to be the happiness. And you know, I can't actually understand it because the job I do, you know, and without actually mentioning what I do, you know, we actually inspire people and we change people's lives. And I believe that in today's world, the face-to-face communication is missing. And that is what I believe is true happiness.
Yes, social research shows that all the social networking creates an artificial sense of friendship and companionship. How many Facebook friends do you have? An illusion has been perpetuated that you can actually sustain relationships via social networking websites. Actually, people are becoming more lonely in this way because they're lacking substantial personal connection. But those websites give you the impression that you've got friends, you can connect. But statistics, social statistics show that the number of actual personal friends that people in the first world have, that number is decreased. People are more lonely than ever. This reminds me of an advert in wealthy periodicals aimed at the wealthy in the USA. It was a true advert. The advert was promoting a housing development for upper middle class persons. And it pointed out the advantages of the house. There would be ample bedrooms. There would be an office for the man on the opposite side of the house from the office for his wife, so they would not have to see each other. And there would be 5 separate internet alcoves, all separated from each other. So each family member could absorb himself, herself in the internet without being disturbed by any of the family members. And so the caption for this advert was, "This is the perfect house for today's dysfunctional family." That's the situation. In Krishna consciousness, you find real friends because they have your deepest interests at heart. Gatherings like this bring about genuine association. genuine camaraderie, genuine loving exchanges, because what we're doing here is all connected directly to Krishna, the ultimate source. Like all the spokes are connected to the hub. Therefore, we can have true love, true care, true compassion. So you're right. Statistics show that, particularly in the first world, people are becoming more lonely than ever before. And the fastest growing disease in terms of measured disease impact is mental depression. It's number 2 behind heart problems. Is this the symptom of a progressive society?
Anyone else? Just if anyone hasn't asked a question yet, don't be shy. Yes, please.
The question seems to link to things which I've been hearing from other people about if you want to take a further step in spiritual life, but there's a lot of fear of leaving things behind or leaving association behind, especially if that association is tied up with what you do for a living or what you potentially could do for a living. There's a lot of fear attached. It's how to make that, when you just know inside that you're doing the right thing, how to overcome that fear.
Very good question. And yes, I see that fear all the time throughout the world in my travels. That fear is overcome by good association. We all need a support group. Bhakti requires support. We need the encouragement and upliftment that inspiring spiritual association can give. On our own, it'll be difficult because of this mass consensual trance. We have the conditioning we're bringing in from the past lifetime. We have conditioning we've picked up during this lifetime. We've got family conditioning, social conditioning, on and on it goes. It can seem impossible to break free from all that. But if we have spiritually enlivening association and support, our progress is completely possible.
Okay, one final question. Anyone? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I've had the great pleasure of meeting some of your disciples in other parts of the world who are specifically involved with outreach activity. I know that's an area that's very dear to you, and it's taken place in many places around the world. It's an area that's close to my heart, to work with new people and reach out to people and help them on their path to Bhakti, as a KC. My question is, how important is it for us to be able to continue doing our service, both personally and as part of the movement, and yet at the same time avoid the disease of judging others and respecting the path that they may be on? That is to say, many people may come to the outreach programs, they may be on a parallel path, they may not be ready or even want to change to this particular path. So how can we best get the best out of them and help them in a spirit of non-judgmentalism and compassion?
Well, the centers I've tried to establish, so-called bhakti lounges, lofts, they're all about creating an ambience, like a spiritual nightclub where anyone can drop by and just feel inspired. Who doesn't want good food, good music, good vibes? This is non-sectarian. So if you can provide tasty food, very electric atmosphere, in other words, replace the material cafe scene. Just like when I already mentioned, when I'm here in London during the summer And the warm nights, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, you see everyone just at the pubs, outside the pubs, sitting, standing with their beer mugs in their hand, just talking, just they're feeling, they're in the flow. Why can't we create a spiritual version of that? So that's what I tried to do. The purpose of such places is not to judge anyone. It's just to make you want to come back again and again and again. Yes, good music, good food, good people. Yeah. Well, I'll come. I got to eat somewhere. It's a happening place. There are yoga classes, there's meditation classes, Bhagavad Gita classes. So many different happenings you can plug into. Take your pick. I've seen that there's such a huge market for this approach. And naturally, from that kind of approach, some persons will become full bhakti yogis. Some may just come periodically. Some can come even 3 days a week, and still they're doing their own thing. That's all right. We want to create a happening where everyone feels they can plug in. And then let water seek its own level. Those who want to take advantage of Krishna's instructions, they'll do so. Those who feel they have another calling or they have some other purpose in life, that's all right. By their coming, they're helping to support the whole venture. Just like any nightclub or cafe doesn't discriminate. Oh, you are a Buddhist or you are this or that. We don't take your money. You can't come. No, everyone can come. Pay the cover fee and you're in. You get your exquisite cuisine. You get the atmosphere. What more could you want after a hard day's work, or study, or employment, to come to such a place? And we make it clear, this place is not belonging to the devotees. This place is for the guests. When the guests walk in the door, we want them to feel, this is my place, not this is the Hare Krishna's place. When I hear guests, when I overhear them saying to their friends that this is our place, let's bring our friends here, this is our club, then we know we're successful. When they tell others, I'm going to take you to my place, Sometimes I even overhear them saying, I hope the whole city doesn't find out about this place, I hope it remains a secret, because that adds to the mystique, The undiscovered cool place that no one else knows. My place. I'm going to take you to my cafe. So, such potential here in London for such endeavors. I know because, for example, in New Zealand, so many British tourists are there. And yes, they take up the bhakti path. When they're traveling in New Zealand, they drop by and they have no problems taking up Krishna consciousness, even though they have zero religious background. But they don't see the barriers that they may perceive elsewhere. They just see, this is a cool place. Spiritual life is cool. And they become part of it. So, since you asked, I tried to explain a little.
Give a big round of applause for Devamrita Swami.